Two of Hillary Clinton's top campaign officials realized how big the email scandal was when it first broke. All coming from emails you were never supposed to see. This is Special Report. Good evening, welcome to Washington. I'm Brett Baer. From its launch, it's fair to say the Clinton campaign has been obsessed or preoccupied with secrecy. And now, with internal conversations from hacked emails put out by WikiLeaks for the world to see, we're learning that, as suspected, that secrecy led to Hillary Clinton's use of a private email server in the first place. And today, emails revealed just how in the dark her top aides were kept when word about that private server hit the news. Chief National Correspondent Ed Henry has details in our top story.
Even the top two officials in Hillary Clinton's campaign were kept in the dark on the full extent of her email scandal by either the candidate herself or others in the inner circle. As the story first broke, campaign chairman John Podesta wrote to Robbie Mook, "Did you have any idea of the depth of this story?" Mook, the campaign manager, responded, "Nope. We brought up the existence of emails in research this summer, but were told that everything was taken care of." That came as the New York Times posted its first story late on March 2nd, 2015, about Clinton's use of a personal email account as Secretary of State. A dramatic sign the potential next commander-in-chief shares critical information with only a couple of trusted advisors like Huma Abedin and Cheryl Mills. Another new email shows while Mills was chief of staff at the State Department, she was extensively discussing Clinton Foundation business and other matters with Podesta on her Gmail account, and pointedly warned if a note was sent to her state.gov account, quote, "As a reminder, government email is maintained as federal records." The secretiveness and political damage was too much for liberal activist Neera Tanden, who wrote Podesta on the email scandal in the summer of 2015, like whole thing is bleeping insane. Despite that candid admission, other emails exposed Clinton's campaign aides plotting a strategy to use a TV ad to deliberately tie the email flap to Benghazi, to confuse voters into thinking the email scandal was just a Republican conspiracy ahead of her appearance before Chairman Trey Gowdy. Clinton aide writing, quote, "If the objective is to connect emails, Benghazi, and conflate the two in voters' minds, which consultants feel is an imperative here, I'm not sure we know whether we can credibly do that. We'll get a read from focus groups." Also spilling out damaging emails from former Clinton intimate Doug Band, laying out how Bill Clinton lined his own pockets. A 2011 memo revealing the plan, quote, yielded more than $30 million for him personally, with $66 million to be paid out later. Another Mook email said he was aligning with the White House and Debbie Wasserman Schultz to hire a top aide at the DNC when they claimed to be neutral, a sign the deck was stacked against Bernie Sanders. Brett?
Ed, thank you. Tonight we take a closer look at the man who essentially rebuilt a former president's brand after the Monica Lewinsky scandal and impeachment, and how that job led to millions of dollars for the Clintons from intertwined relationships through the Clinton Foundation. Correspondent Doug McKelway has the story of Bill Clinton's body man, Doug Band.
Doug Band is at the center of the web of fundraising, charitable giving, and for-profit activities of the Clinton Foundation, or what he calls in his memo, Bill Clinton, Inc.
He was the architect of trying to make sure that they fully leveraged the foundation, fully leveraged all their contacts, so that Bill Clinton, who now was outside government while his wife was Secretary of State, could charge as much money for everything he did.
Band was a key Bill Clinton aide who used that connection to become a partner in Teneo Consulting, representing some of the largest companies in the world. If those companies wanted access to the Clintons, Band held the key.
He did not have much money to his name, and it was really just he and Doug Band together, this sort of two-man team that was off on their own in those early years after the White House. And Doug Band really kind of built him into this global brand.
Mr. Band called the arrangement unorthodox. The rest of us call it outright corrupt.
In November of of 2011, she emailed Hillary's inner circle, quote, "My father was told today of explicit examples of Doug Teneo pushing for and receiving free memberships, and of multiple examples of Teneo hustling business at CGI." Chelsea's complaints sparked a feud between her and Band. He wrote 3 weeks later, quote, "This is the third time this week she has gone to Daddy to change a decision or interject herself in the process."
He was also resentful of her asserting that role. He saw her as what he's called in these emails a, quote, spoiled brat.
2 weeks after that, top Clinton aide Cheryl Mills fired off an email to Band outlining changes to the foundation's business model. A month later, after receiving a complimentary email from Chelsea, Band confided to Podesta and Mills, quote, "As they say, the apple doesn't fall far. A kiss on the cheek while she's sticking a knife in the back and front." Doug Band did not respond to our inquiries for an interview. Teneo told us that it did not receive any financial benefit from this, and the Clinton campaign told us it is still not confirming the authenticity of emails hacked by the Russian government to influence this election. Brett?
Although not denying that authenticity either. Doug, thank you. Donald Trump is once again raising the possibility of voter fraud. He says there are already problems during early voting in Texas. We'll take a look at that in just a moment. It comes as Trump continues to target a handful of states with big electoral vote counts. Chief political correspondent Carl Cameron is with the Trump campaign tonight in Geneva, Ohio, where the nominee will hold a rally in the next hour.
Early voting is underway, so make sure, get out and vote. We don't want to give this away.
The latest Quinnipiac state polls show a toss-up in red Georgia, Trump at 44% to Clinton's 43%. In Iowa, it's an actual tie at 44%. In North Carolina, Clinton edges Trump 47 to 43%. And in Virginia, Clinton tops Trump 50 to 38%. Trump continues to cast doubt on polls and the process, calling the polls rigged and pouncing on reports of voting machine irregularities in Texas. If Trump loses, former Illinois Congressman and self-described Tea Partier Joe Walsh tweeted today, quote, "On November 8th, I'm voting for Trump. On November 9th, if Trump loses, I'm grabbing my musket. You in?" Such threats are increasingly common and began to surface at Trump and Pence events several weeks ago.
If Hillary Clinton gets in, I'm ready for a revolution because we can't have her in.
Yeah, you don't say.
But I'm just saying it. No, I'm like Trump.
Trump, who has not agreed to accept the outcome of the election as legitimate if he loses, appeared with his wife today on Good Morning America and refused to say if he'd work with Clinton if she wins.
I just want to make that decision at a later date. I'm not saying I'm not or I am. Hopefully I won't have to make that decision. I really believe we're going to win.
In the latest Fox poll, 88% of Clinton supporters say they'll accept a Trump victory, 10% won't. 56% of Trump backers say they'll accept a Clinton victory, and 34% say no way. His wife said part of her work with children as First Lady would be helping them understand appropriate communications online. Ironic given some of her husband's saltier posts on Twitter.
But we need to teach them how to use it, what is right to say, what is not right to say, and because it's very bad out there and children get hurt.
Carl Cameron with the Trump campaign in Ohio. Carl, thank you. Let's go now into those claims of voter irregularities in Texas. Tonight's senior correspondent Eric Shawn has the latest on what we know.
Is it voter fraud or the voters' fault? Voters in 3 Texas counties claim their votes were switched on voting machines. That prompted Trump to tweet, quote, "A lot of call-ins about vote flipping at the voting booths in Texas. People are not happy. Big lines. What is going on?"
I check pretty closely. I'd turn the thing and look at it and make sure the people I voted for were the ones that were highlighted.
In a Facebook post shared more than 9,000 times, voter Lisa Hollett wrote, quote, "I voted a straight Republican ticket, and as I scrolled to submit my ballot, I noticed that the Republican straight ticket was highlighted. However, the Clinton Kane box was also highlighted. I tried to go back and change and could not get it to work." Election officials believe it was inadvertent on Lisa's part, and she says her correct vote was cast. In Chambers County, officials blamed a software programming error for machines that simply skipped a race, and that has now been resolved. County Clerk Heather Hawthorne said, quote, "I strongly believe in the integrity of the election process. Using paper ballots in the interim, as prescribed by the Texas Election Code, allowed our vendor to resolve the issue quickly." In every recent presidential election, some voters using touchscreen machines have claimed their votes were changed too. We reported on this phenomenon last week.
Can a touchscreen switch a vote?
People say that they can. I've never seen it do it.
Election officials urge voters to double-check their votes, but others blame outdated voting machine technology for the mix-ups.
You're talking about, for the most part, machines that were purchased at least 10 years ago. And when you think about that, that's long before we had iPhones or iPads. The technology, the touchscreen technology, was not nearly as advanced as it is today.
Well, meanwhile, Texas Governor Greg Abbott has said the largest voter fraud investigation in the state's history is in Tarrant County, which includes Fort Worth. Thousands of absentee ballots were allegedly found with improper signatures. The state's attorney general is now investigating. Brett?
Oh, Eric, we have a team here, you and your team, looking into serious allegations, if there are any allegations around the country about voter fraud. There are rumors on the internet, different stories, and you see them on many sites, about voting machines somehow connected to George Soros in 16 different states. What's the truth on this?
No, this one is not true. The company is Smartmatic. It says that George Soros does not own it. Its machines are not even being used in the election next month. The only link to Soros is the company's chairman. His name is Mark Malloch Brown. He is a member of Soros's Open Society Foundation. By the way, we covered him. He was once UN Secretary General Kofi Annan's chief of staff, Brett.
George Soros, the liberal billionaire supporting Hillary Clinton. Eric Shawn, thank you. In our Issues That Matter segment tonight, immigration. It came in at number 9 on our list of most important topics this election season. That's by polls. Some people were surprised by that positioning, but immigration, of course, is a particularly strong issue in Texas. The two presidential nominees could not be much further apart. Correspondent Casey Stiegel reports from the Lone Star State.
They're bringing drugs, they're bringing crime, they're rapists.
I am staunchly in favor of comprehensive immigration reform.
Two very different opinions.
We have some bad hombres here, and we're going to get them out.
One contentious topic.
I don't want to rip families apart. I don't want to be sending parents away from children.
How to tackle the issue of immigration. For Frank Schuster, like so many Americans,
it's a little scarier.
This is not about rhetoric. It's personal.
You want a drug dealer coming through your backyard every week?
Frank is a vegetable farmer in McAllen, Texas. His sprawling land butts up against the Rio Grande River. In this part of Texas, water is all that separates Mexico from the United States.
The border is a porous border. People coming across, thousands every month.
But he says he's torn. While security is paramount, Schuster also needs a robust workforce.
Our labor is getting tighter and tighter. Every spring, we lose crops.
Under part of his immigration plan, Donald Trump originally called for immediately deporting the estimated 11 million illegal immigrants already calling the U.S. home. He has since said he'll focus on kicking out drug lords and criminals first, and then after building his wall, make a determination on the rest. Though a Trump supporter, Schuster says he's afraid of what that could mean for his farming business, considering an estimated 70% of the country's agriculture employees are undocumented.
If you take 70% of the workers in any industry and try to get them out, it's going to be devastating.
Across town,
it concerns me greatly.
Othel Brand Jr., a lifelong resident of McAllen, is also pondering the implications of each candidate's position.
It's real hard for us to listen to people come down and tell us how safe it is.
Brand says he's in favor of Mr. Trump's platform.
The first thing to do is to stop the illegal traffic.
While Trump's strategy is keeping people out, the cornerstone of Secretary Hillary Clinton's immigration policy has been comprehensive reform, including securing the border. She vows to create a pathway to citizenship within her first 100 days in office.
I still can be a good citizen. I can be a great American citizen.
Marco Malagan came to America at age 17. He attended high school and college in Texas, an option that wouldn't have been on the table under Trump's plan. As senator in 2003, Secretary Clinton co-sponsored legislation to protect people like Marco, and she still very much supports it.
All we want is an opportunity for us to be able to stay with our families, and succeed in the American dream.
There is one facet both candidates agree on: extreme vetting and criminal background checks for not only immigrants coming in, but refugees as well, Syrian or otherwise. Someone like this woman.
It's impossible not to cry, to leave everything behind.
Andrea says her husband was kidnapped by cartels, so she fled her native country of El Salvador with her 2-month-old daughter. She says the journey took about 14 days before finally arriving at the Texas-Mexico border and surrendering to Border Patrol.
I was very afraid. I was afraid for her. I was afraid that she would get sick, that she would die.
Back on Frank Schuster's farm, he says he feels compassion for people like Andrea and others who truly want a better life for their families, but he can't help but wonder at what cost.
We've just got to get control of the people coming across, that we know who's here.
A recent Fox News poll shows 77% of all registered voters actually support a path to legal citizenship versus mass deportations. And pluralities of Republican primary voters echoed those sentiments earlier this year in nearly every state with an exit poll. Brett?
Casey, thank you. Tomorrow we continue our 10-part series, The Issue Tomorrow, Foreign Policy, as we continue all of these issues that matter along the way to Election Day. The current First Lady and the former First Lady who wants to be the next president made their first joint appearance of the campaign this afternoon. It happened in a major battleground state where there also happens to be a key Senate race up for grabs. Fox News correspondent Jennifer Griffin is covering that story tonight from Winston-Salem, North Carolina.
We go high when they go low. So you were out there working your hearts out for my girl. Here's the thing that I just want to tell you all. Because this has been a draining election. But I urge you to please be encouraged.
Timing is everything in politics. Early voting at polling places started last Monday in North Carolina, where the Real Clear Politics average shows Clinton up 2 points against Donald Trump.
Indeed, dignity and respect for women and girls is also on the ballot in this election. And I want to thank our First Lady for her eloquent, powerful defense of that basic value.
The last debate and the revelations in the Access Hollywood tape led to a bump among women voters for Clinton, but the drip, drip, drip of WikiLeaks emails orchestrated, the U.S. intelligence community and campaigns say, by Russia to harm Clinton is causing the drop in poll numbers. A new Fox News poll shows Clinton has hit a new low on honesty and trustworthiness. 67% of those polled say Clinton is untrustworthy. Today, another leaked email shows even Clinton's closest campaign advisors have struggled with Clinton's baggage. Neera Tanden, who is overseeing Clinton's transition team, wrote to John Podesta in July of 2015, "Do we actually know who told Hillary she could use a private email? And has that person been drawn and quartered?" Michelle Obama and Hillary Clinton were not always close. Concerns about the bullying rhetoric unleashed during this election has brought the First Lady out to help deliver Clinton's strongest closing argument for tolerance and acceptance.
They are trying to convince you that your vote doesn't matter, that the outcome has already been determined and you shouldn't even bother making your voice heard. They are trying to take away your hope.
Michelle Obama never mentioned Donald Trump by name today. She reminded the crowd that her husband won North Carolina in 2008 by just 14,000 votes. He lost in 2012, even though the Democrats held their convention here. She said, "Don't let anyone tell you that your vote doesn't matter." Brett?
Jennifer, thank you. Senator Ted Cruz is hinting Republicans might indefinitely block a Supreme Court nominee from Hillary Clinton should she win the election. Senator John McCain made a similar suggestion earlier this month. There has been an opening on the bench since the death of Justice Antonin Scalia earlier this year. The president's nominee to fill that opening, Merrick Garland, has not received a hearing in the Senate as of yet. Yesterday, Justice Clarence Thomas told an audience that the Supreme Court nomination process is evidence that Washington is broken in some ways. The Dow dropped 30 today. The S&P 500 lost 6. The Nasdaq was down 34. There are new questions tonight about the relationship between Hillary Clinton's team and a major defense contractor. money changed hands, a lot of it. And now it is yet another perceived impropriety the Democratic nominee must answer for. Chief Washington correspondent James Rosen has exclusive details in the story you'll only see right here on Fox.
In early 2012, as Hillary Clinton embarked on her final year as Secretary of State, Raytheon, the leading defense contractor, yearned for a bigger slice of the action of foreign military sales. So the firm, according to federal lobbying records obtained by Fox News, hired 3 lobbyists, among them Heather Podesta, whose brother-in-law at the time was John Podesta, now famous as Hillary Clinton's campaign manager and the subject of daily WikiLeaks revelations. In 2012, John Podesta held the title of Senior Advisor at the Department of State. Records show Raytheon also hired 2 lobbyists at the powerhouse D.C. firm DLA Piper. All 3 lobbyists were big-time donors or bundlers for Hillary Clinton in 2008 and 2016. Between them, they've raised hundreds of thousands for Clinton's campaigns and earned hundreds of thousands lobbying her on Raytheon's behalf.
Everything I did as Secretary of State was in furtherance of our country's interests and our values.
Approving foreign military sales at the time was Assistant Secretary of State Andrew Shapiro, whose previous job had been as an advisor in Clinton's Senate office. Shapiro now resides at Beacon, the consulting firm he co-founded with Clinton press aide Philippe Reines.
While there's one person who has, final sign-off, that one person can't do it without a whole body of evidence and analysis and review and interagency consensus before they get to that point.
In the end, Raytheon's gambit worked, as the firm in 2012 snagged at least 17 foreign military sales contracts worth $26 billion, including 3 for sales of advanced weapon systems to Qatar that alone accounted for $19 billion. An email from a Clinton Foundation official published in the 6th of WikiLeaks releases from the John Podesta archive shows that the year before, Qatar had pledged $1 million to the Clinton Foundation to mark Bill Clinton's birthday, seeking in return a 5-minute meeting with him. After Clinton stepped down as Secretary of State, Raytheon appears to have discontinued its lobbying relationship with Heather Podesta and stopped using DLA Piper to lobby its state. The appearance is akin to one of those pop-up stores that materializes just to sell Halloween candy or July 4th fireworks for a seasonal need, and after that seasonal need has been met, vanishes.
The only considerations that are factored into the foreign military sales program is the furtherance of foreign policy objectives of the United States of America, and not the efforts by external groups to lobby, as you say, or to influence that decision.
The Republican National Committee said the lobbying effort undercuts denials from the Clinton campaign that there was no pay-to-play culture at the Clinton State Department.
The people that sought access and had and stood to gain from access to the State Department didn't agree, and that's why they made these hires. These lobbyists that were hired, their experience was getting access to Hillary Clinton and raising money for her.
The Clinton campaign told me Mrs. Clinton, quote, never took action as Secretary of State because of any donations, and any suggestion to the contrary is false. Raytheon told me its lobbying practices and policies are fully disclosed and comply with all federal, state, and local laws. DLA Piper did not respond to a request for comment. Heather Podesta sent me a 1-sentence email saying, I never lobbied the Secretary or John Podesta on this matter. Brett?
James, thank you. At least 22 children and 6 teachers are dead following airstrikes on a school complex in Syria's rebel-held Idlib province. It's said to be the deadliest attack on a school since the civil war began there 6 years ago. Meanwhile, another attack on a rebel-held Damascus suburb left at least 8 dead. Tonight we take you to the other front line in Iraq, the one far away from Mosul, and we'll put you right in the middle of the action. Correspondent Benjamin Hall comes to us from near Sinjar, where he's traveling with Kurdish Peshmerga forces and one very brave American.
Iraqi commanders said today they had pushed ISIS militants out of a small town south of Mosul and are now just 20 miles from the city. Meanwhile, in the east, special forces have dug in, saying they are awaiting more progress on the southern front before moving forward. But 40 miles west of Mosul, the story is very different. A forgotten front, where a small group of men are under almost constant attack. There we found U.S. Special Forces veteran David Shumuk, 62, from Florida. He came 2 years ago, having lost his daughter, and joined the quick reaction Kurdish Special Forces.
We've received no support, actually. In the year that I've been here with General Hakkar, we've never seen an American officer or an official come to to this front line. The media is so focused on Mosul, they forget that there's an 800-kilometer front. And this is the closest one to Syria, and this is the direct supply route that Daesh uses.
Much of the U.S. equipment they currently have, including vehicles like this Humvee, they won back from ISIS.
We need everything. We beg, borrow, whatever we can do. The General and I raised money in America just to get night vision goggles. This is the limits of our night vision capability. This is a very old Class 2 night vision scope. That's what General Haqqar and Ahmed had the other night on the front line, being shot at, trying to find Daesh through that.
General Haqqar, their leader, says these men are a close-knit group, a fighting family. They fought against Saddam in the 90s, and today they're fighting ISIS, alongside this former U.S. pararescueman.
This is the first aid kit I throw on my back and get my weapons, and we go.
Just 3 days ago, ISIS launched a full-scale attack here involving hundreds of fighters and up to 18 suicide trucks. On that occasion, they fought them back, but they're surrounded on 3 sides, in some cases less than half a mile. And the feeling is here that they're coming back. Brett?
Benjamin Hall, near Sinjar, Iraq. Benjamin, thank you.
I think we've had enough of the Clintons, in all fairness. Don't you think? Had enough. I mean, at what point do we say it? Hillary Clinton is the most corrupt person ever to seek the office of the presidency.
And so I hope, after all North Carolina has gone through with the efforts to suppress people's votes, you will turn out in the biggest numbers ever to say, no, we demand the right to vote.
So when you hear folks talking about a global conspiracy and saying that this election is rigged, understand that they are trying to get you to stay home.
The First Lady on the trail with Secretary Clinton, also Donald Trump out and about. Let's take a look at the SR average, the poll of polls here. We have it at Clinton plus 5.2 nationally. That includes Fox News, Washington Post, ABC, IBD, TIPP, that's Investor Business Daily. That is in this group of polls, Pew and CNBC. With that, let's bring in our panel. Lisa Booth, columnist with the Washington Examiner, A.B. Stoddard, associate editor at Real Clear Politics, and syndicated columnist Charles Krauthammer. Okay, Lisa, they're making the closing arguments. Michelle Obama, it looked like really helping and trying to energize the turnout with young people, especially in North Carolina.
Well, and that's exactly what they need to do. And I think what we're looking at right now is a race that is tightening, and the leads that Hillary Clinton does have are not insurmountable. Whereas if you looked at this race after the Access Hollywood tapes leaked, then we were talking about potentially losing the House. So I think if you're the Republican Party, you're feeling a little bit better about the situation as far as where the Senate majority holds as well as the House holds. That being said, Donald Trump is looking at a really tough road to victory. I mean, he's not only got to keep states like Arizona, Georgia, Texas, and Utah, but he also has to flip states that Romney lost in 2012 that are going to be tough for him, looking at Nevada, Florida, Ohio as well. So I think we're looking at a tightening race, but Hillary Clinton's still up.
You know, AB, we see these polls about Georgia, about Arizona, Texas. Most of the experts in those states say they're not going to go blue, but there are some of those polls that are really tight, and that they say it's maybe not a trend, but about this election per se.
Right. If Hillary Clinton were to win in Georgia or Arizona, I don't think it's a permanent Democratic realignment in those places, but it does require more resources, trying to get out the vote in Texas, where it's looking close, trying to hold Arizona as a red state, where she has something more than 30 field offices, and I think Trump has none. I mean, this is still something that in the end it costs money and manpower, and it's stressful as the party tries to mobilize its supporters. They don't want to be protecting, Hillary trying to block in red states. And so look, she would argue it's worth all her resources, because with a good ground game, what if it was close and she could push it up 1.5 points and take a state simply because she had the boots on the ground? That's why you see them going there, and they stash the money in advance in case an opportunity like this arose.
Charles, I want to ask you about these emails and what we're seeing inside them. First of all, Cheryl Mills, she's the former chief of staff for Hillary Clinton, and one of these WikiLeaks emails exchanges, at the end of it, she points out that in a note to send it to another account, not state.gov, because she says, as a reminder, government email is maintained as federal records. In other words, don't send it there if you've got something to tell me that we shouldn't be saving.
Well, look, this brings us back full circle to where we started. The original question was, why does she have a private email? She said convenience. Obviously, that was ridiculous. She was carrying around a whole lot of devices. It was obvious she was hiding something. And think about it. She set it up in 2009, before becoming Secretary of State. So she anticipated having exchanges that she would not want anyone to see. So we've been asking ourselves on this set for a year almost, what exactly didn't she want people to see? Well, now we know them, and as we speculated, the most plausible explanation was the rank corruption of the Clinton Foundation and its corrupt, I don't know if it's illegal, but corrupt relationship with the State Department. And her only defense, as we saw earlier, the Democrats are saying, well, there was nothing that she did, as in the Raytheon case, that was corrupted by donations. You can believe that if you want, but there's a reason that people give donations in large amounts, and that's to influence the outcome of decisions. So this, we're getting unfolding to us exactly what she anticipated having to hide, and it is really dirty business.
Another email, Lisa, John Podesta to Robbie Mook, campaign manager, says, did you have any idea the depth of this story? This is when the New York Times breaks the email private server story. Mook writes back, nope, we brought up the existence of emails in research this summer, but we're told that everything was taken care of. I mean, those are two top officials in this campaign saying they had no clue.
I find that pretty astounding, because typically when you work on a campaign, I mean, you do opposition research on your own candidate.
And that's what he's referring to there.
Right.
Is the oppo research against your own candidate to prepare for a run.
Exactly, and that's what they were doing. But the fact that they didn't know the depths of it, I find very interesting, because typically individuals, especially people that are at the top like that, would be aware of all the, deep, dark secrets that are potentially going to surface, because what you want to do as a campaign is to get out in front of it and know what's coming, to protect yourselves. Because clearly this is a massive campaign issue for Hillary Clinton, the fact that we're still talking about this. And if you even looked at polling post, FBI Director Comey, when he made the announcement that they're not going to bring forward or recommendations for charges, you had 92% of Americans that think she either broke the law or did something wrong. That is a lot of, Americans who had a negative viewpoint about what she did. So this was a serious campaign issue, and I find it shocking that, she is that secretive that she didn't even let the people at the top know exactly what was going on.
AB, we'll talk about the foundation next and some of the revelations there, but your thoughts about how this kind of evolves. And the media's actually, it's been on some front pages. It's been on some, breaking through.
I'm not surprised, because she's extremely secretive and she only trusts a few people. And I believe that Uma Abedin and Cheryl Mills are the two that actually always know what she's doing, but there are not a lot of other people. And when people, you could see Neera Tannen from Center for American Progress and Podesta and others talking about, hey, maybe we could mitigate this damage. Is there any way to prevent this? The optics of this are terrible. And it always comes from the top. She feels entitled. She's completely politically sort of obtuse and tone deaf. She feels she can do whatever she wants. Nothing ever smells wrong to her. And she just sort of blazes forward, and then they're left to clean up a mess. And that's what the sort of the greasy details of the WikiLeaks emails show, the way that she conducts herself and the people around her.
I mean, the irony here is that she's the most secretive, obsessed with secrecy campaign, and yet now it is not secret at all. There are no secrets, and we're seeing the internal conversations because of these WikiLeaks, which were hacked. And
there was one more reason, as we saw in one of the emails, because she thought she could get away with it. And to answer to the question of why wasn't all this released 16 months ago, get it out of the way. And that's the history of the Clintons. They have always gotten away with it, including, the famous story of the Monica Lewinsky scandal. It breaks. Clinton calls in his pollster. He says, what happens? He says, if you confess, you're done. You got to resign. You're out of here. So he lies for, what was it, 8 months? And in the end, that worked. He got away with it. And
all right, next up.
That's what she has learned from her 30 years.
Next up, who is Doug Band, and how did he make millions? for the Clintons. That was the former president trying to unwind what is a very tangled web of fundraising, charitable giving, and for-profit activities led by a man named Doug Band. Well, these WikiLeaks emails have produced a lot of information about the Clinton Foundation. One of them is a giant memo from Doug Band about for-profit activity of President Clinton. Independent of our fundraising and decision-making activities on behalf of the foundation, we have dedicated ourselves to helping the president secure and engage in for-profit activities, including speeches, books, and advisory service engagements. In that context, we have, in effect, served as agents, lawyers, managers, and implementers to secure speaking, business, and advisory service deals in support of the president's for-profit activity. We've also solicited and obtained, as appropriate, in-kind services for the president and his family for personal travel, hospitality, vacation, and the like. Neither Justin nor I are separately compensated for these activities. We do not receive a fee or percentage of the more than $50 million in for-profit activity we have personally helped secure for President Clinton to date, or the $66 million in future contracts should he choose to continue with those engagements. There are many more of these emails that show specific engagements. The speaking fees doubled when Secretary of State Hillary Clinton was in office. We're back with the panel. Lisa, as you go down into this, this potentially is the biggest part of this whole email thing.
Well, and there's just a lot there. And to Charles' point earlier, this is sort of the perpetually, gray, illegal, and unethical territory that the Clintons operate in and have been operating for decades. And you look at this memo, you look at the fact that Bill Clinton profited $66 million in personal income from these Clinton Foundation sources, the same donors who had business in front of the State Department. You also look at that AP article from not too long ago about the fact that more than half of our non-government meetings were Clinton Foundation donors, and that sort of puts that into question and those perspective and the people that she was meeting with. And you also look at one example like UBS, the bank, where essentially she intervened as with the State Department, which the Wall Street Journal said was an unusual intervention by a top U.S. diplomat. And what she did was basically help protect them, cut them a deal from as State Department from the IRS. That was a big Clinton Foundation donor, and they also paid Bill Clinton speaking fees. Yeah. So you can go down the list and look at example after example, which certainly does look like pay for play and corruption.
Yeah, we did this more than a year ago in an hour special called Tangled Web, and based on the Clinton Cash book by Peter Schweitzer, and just pulling up some of these emails, AB, it does get directly to some of the things he brings up.
They're hoping that this is baked into the cake of people supporting him.